Chapter 1. Unforeseen Revelations. The kitchen was filled with the comforting aroma of garlic and onions sautéing in olive oil. Emma stood at the counter, her hands skillfully chopping a colorful array of vegetables. The rhythmic sound of the knife against the cutting board blended with her soft humming, creating a soothing ambience. The evening sun poured through the large windows, casting a warm, golden glow that wrapped the room in a cozy embrace. In the adjacent living room, Olivia and Ben were immersed in their playtime. Olivia, with her bright red hair tied in pigtails, was deeply engrossed in building a towering structure with her Lego blocks. Ben, a curly-haired bundle of energy, was lying on his stomach, coloring in his favorite superhero book. Their laughter and playful banter filled the air, a gentle reminder of the happiness that usually permeated their home. Emma glanced at the clock above the stove. It was nearing dinner time, and she expected John to call soon, as he usually did when he was away on business. She thought about the last conversation they had, how he had promised to be back in time for the weekend, and how much the kids missed him. Suddenly the doorbell rang, shattering the serene atmosphere. Emma frowned, glancing towards the front door. Visitors at this hour were rare, and she wasn't expecting anyone. She quickly wiped her hands on a towel and made her way to the door. Curiosity piqued. Opening the door, Emma was met with the sight of a young woman standing on the porch. She appeared nervous, her posture tense, and her eyes darting around uncertainly. Despite her evident anxiety, there was a determined set to her jaw. Emma recognized her instantly. It was Lisa, a colleague of John's she had seen a few times during visits to his office. Lisa was striking, with piercing blue eyes and blonde hair neatly pulled back into a ponytail. "Hi, can I help you?" Emma asked, her tone polite but edged with curiosity. Lisa's eyes flicked up to meet Emma's, and she forced a small, hesitant smile. "Hi, I'm Lisa," she introduced herself, though Emma already knew. "I'm a colleague of John's. Is he home?" Emma's heart skipped a beat, an inexplicable sense of foreboding washing over her. Why would John's colleague be here? And why did she look so anxious? "No, he's on a business trip. Is there something urgent?" Emma inquired, her voice steady despite the growing unease in her stomach. Lisa hesitated, biting her lip as if weighing her words carefully. I thought he was back. I needed to talk to him about something important." Emma felt the knot in her stomach tighten. "You can leave a message with me. I'll make sure he gets it," she offered, trying to maintain a calm demeanor. Lisa looked down, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and regret. She took a deep breath, then met Emma's gaze with a look of determination. "I think it's something you should know too. I'm sorry. I thought you already knew." Emma's mind raced, her heart pounding in her chest. "Knew what?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Taking another deep breath, Lisa steeled herself. "John and I have been seeing each other for the past 6 months. I didn't know he was married until recently. I'm so sorry." For a moment, Emma felt the world tilt beneath her feet. The knife she had been holding clattered to the floor as her hands went numb. She stared at Lisa, her mind struggling to process the bombshell that had just been dropped. "What?" Emma whispered, her voice filled with disbelief and pain. You're having an affair with my husband." Lisa nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen. I thought you should know." Emma's heart shattered into a million pieces. The betrayal, the hurt, and the anger all surged within her, threatening to consume her. She took a step back, gripping the doorframe for support, her eyes never leaving Lisa's tearful face. Please leave, Emma managed to say, her voice trembling. I need you to leave. Lisa nodded, tears streaming down her face as she turned and walked away, her shoulders slumped with regret. Emma closed the door with a trembling hand, leaning against it as the weight of the revelation pressed down on her. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. How could John do this to her, to their family? She thought of their children, playing innocently in the living room, unaware of the storm brewing in their mother's heart. She could still hear their laughter, but it felt distant, as if she were underwater. Emma's legs felt weak, and she slowly slid down to the floor, wrapping her arms around her knees. She rocked back and forth, trying to make sense of the chaos that had just been unleashed in her life. John had always been her rock, her partner in everything. They had built a life together, shared dreams, and created a beautiful family. The thought that he had betrayed her, shattered their trust, was more than she could bear. Tears streamed down her face as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Emma knew she needed to confront John, but more than that, she needed to find a way to deal with the pain. She couldn't let this break her, not with Olivia and Ben depending on her. They needed her to be strong, to be the steady presence they could rely on. As she stood up, her resolve hardened. She would make John understand the depth of his betrayal. She would make him feel the same pain that was now coursing through her veins. Emma wiped her tears away, took a deep breath, and made a silent vow to herself. She would not let this destroy her. She would find a way to make John pay for what he had done. With a renewed sense of purpose, Emma walked back into the kitchen, where the dinner she had been preparing now seemed like a distant memory. She glanced at Olivia and Ben, who were still engrossed in their play, blissfully unaware of the upheaval in their mother's heart. Emma squared her shoulders, determination etched into her features. The next steps would be difficult, but she knew what she had to do. She would gather her strength, confront John, and take control of her life once more. Emma picked up the knife from the floor, her grip firm and steady. The evening sun still cast its warm glow through the windows, but now it felt like the calm before the storm. Chapter 2. Confrontation. John's flight had landed later than expected, and by the time he finally pulled into the driveway, it was already dark. The house loomed ahead, its windows glowing softly against the evening sky. John felt a wave of relief wash over him. He was home. The business trip had been grueling, and all he wanted was to see Emma and the kids, to relax and enjoy a quiet evening with his family. He grabbed his suitcase from the trunk and made his way to the front door, his mind filled with thoughts of Olivia and Ben. He imagined Olivia's excited squeals and Ben's happy grin as they greeted him. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, expecting the familiar chaos of his children running to welcome him. Instead, he was met with an eerie silence. "Emma," he called out, setting his suitcase down in the hallway. His voice echoed through the quiet house. There was no immediate response. John frowned, unease creeping into his thoughts. He walked further into the house, glancing into the living room where the toys were neatly put away. An unusual sight. The unease grew stronger. Emma emerged from the kitchen, her face pale and drawn. Her usually vibrant eyes were dull, and there was a tension in her posture that immediately set off alarms in John's mind. "John, we need to talk," Emma said, her voice devoid of its usual warmth. John's heart sank. He recognized that tone all too well. It was the tone she used when something was seriously wrong. "What's wrong?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Emma gestured toward the kitchen table. "Sit down," she said, her voice trembling slightly. John obeyed. a knot of dread tightening in his stomach. He sat at the table, his eyes never leaving Emma as she took a seat across from him. The kitchen, usually a place of warmth and comfort, now felt cold and foreign. "Lisa came by yesterday," Emma began, her voice quivering with a mix of anger and pain. John's blood ran cold. His worst fear had come true. "Lisa, what did she want?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "She told me everything, John," Emma continued, her eyes flashing with anger. "About your affair, about how you've been seeing her for 6 months." John's mouth went dry. He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. "Emma, Don't," Emma interrupted, her voice sharp and cutting. "Don't lie to me. I know the truth." John hung his head, unable to meet her gaze. "I'm sorry, Emma. I never meant for this to happen." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away, her expression resolute. "You betrayed me, John. You betrayed our family." "I know," John whispered, his voice filled with remorse. "I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake." Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Sorry isn't enough, John. You need to understand what you've done. You need to feel the pain you've caused." John looked up, fear and confusion in his eyes. "What do you mean?" Emma's expression hardened, her resolve clear. "You'll see." John felt a crushing weight of guilt and dread as he sat at the kitchen table, watching Emma. The silence between them was thick, each second stretching into an eternity. The reality of his actions and their consequences pressed down on him, making it hard to breathe. "Emma, please," he finally said, his voice breaking the silence. "I know I've hurt you. I can't take back what I've done, but I want to make things right. I love you and the kids. I want to fix this." Emma's eyes, once filled with love and trust, were now cold and distant. She shook her head slowly. "Love isn't just words, John. It's actions. You've shattered my trust, and it's not something you can just fix with an apology." John's heart ached at her words, but he knew she was right. He had betrayed her in the worst possible way, and now he had to face the consequences. "What can I do?" he asked, desperation in his voice. "Tell me what I need to do." Emma looked at him, her expression unreadable. "I don't know, John. Right now, I just need time to process everything. I need to think about what this means for us, for our family." John nodded, his heart heavy with regret. "Take all the time you need, Emma. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Emma stood up, her movements slow and deliberate. "I'm going to stay with my sister for a few days," she said quietly. "I need some space to clear my head." John felt a pang of panic at the thought of her leaving, but he knew he had no right to protest. "Okay," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I understand." Emma turned to leave, but then paused, looking back at him. "And John, don't think for a second that this is over. We have a lot to talk about when I get back." With that, she walked out of the kitchen, leaving John alone with his thoughts and the crushing weight of his guilt. He listened to the sound of her footsteps as she went upstairs, followed by the soft murmur of her voice as she spoke to Olivia and Ben. He could hear Olivia's excited chatter and Ben's giggles, completely unaware of the turmoil their parents were going through. John buried his face in his hands, the enormity of his actions finally sinking in. He had betrayed the woman he loved, the mother of his children, and now he had to face the consequences. He knew that the road to redemption would be long and difficult, but he was determined to do whatever it took to earn back Emma's trust and repair the damage he had caused. The next morning, John woke up to an empty house. Emma had left early with Olivia and Ben, taking them to her sister's place. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the usual hustle and bustle of their home. John wandered through the empty rooms, his heart aching with the absence of his family. He knew he had to start making amends, but he wasn't sure where to begin. The first step, he decided, was to reach out to a marriage counselor. He needed professional help to navigate the difficult journey ahead and to show Emma that he was committed to repairing their relationship. John picked up the phone and made an appointment with a well-regarded therapist in town. The earliest available slot was in a week, but he took it, knowing that this was just the beginning of a long process. He also started drafting a letter to Emma, pouring out his heart and apologizing for his actions. He wanted her to know how deeply sorry he was and how much he regretted his betrayal. As the days passed, John immersed himself in work, trying to keep his mind occupied. But no matter how busy he kept himself, the thought of Emma and the kids was always there, a constant reminder of the pain he had caused. He couldn't stop thinking about the look in Emma's eyes when she confronted him, the hurt and anger that had pierced through him like a knife. Finally, the day of the counseling appointment arrived. John walked into the therapist's office, his heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and hope. He was greeted by Dr. Laura Mitchell, a kind-looking woman with warm eyes and a reassuring smile. "John, it's good to meet you," she said, extending her hand. "Please, have a seat." John shook her hand and sat down, feeling a little more at ease in her presence. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, Dr. Mitchell." "Of course, I'm here to help," she replied. "Why don't you start by telling me what's been going on?" John took a deep breath and began to recount the events of the past week, from Lisa's unexpected visit to Emma's confrontation and her decision to leave. He spoke about his guilt, his regret, and his determination to make things right. Dr. Mitchell listened attentively, nodding occasionally. When John finished, she leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. "John, it's clear that you're deeply remorseful and that you want to repair your marriage. That's an important first step. But it's also important to understand that rebuilding trust takes time and effort. It's not something that can be fixed overnight." "I understand," John said quietly. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes." "Good," Dr. Mitchell replied. "I'm going to give you some exercises to work on at home, and I'll also provide you with some reading materials. It's important to communicate openly and honestly with Emma, and to show her through your actions that you're committed to change." John nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. He left the therapist's office with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to start the long journey towards redemption. When Emma returned home a few days later, the tension between them was palpable. John greeted her with a mixture of relief and apprehension, hoping that the time apart had given her some clarity. "Emma," he said softly, "I've been seeing a therapist. I want to do whatever it takes to fix this." Emma looked at him, her expression guarded. "We'll see, John. It's going to take a lot more than just words to make things right." John nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I know, and I'm prepared to show you that I'm committed to change." As they stood there, facing each other in the quiet of their home, both knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but for the sake of their family, they were willing to try. The journey towards healing had begun, and with it, the hope that one day they could rebuild the trust that had been broken. Chapter 3. The Plan. The days following Lisa's visit were a blur for Emma. She moved through her routines mechanically, taking care of Olivia and Ben with a strained smile. But inside, she was a storm of emotions. The betrayal gnawed at her, a constant ache that refused to go away. At night, when the house was quiet and the kids were asleep, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with thoughts of John and Lisa. The hurt, the anger, the disbelief. It was all too much to bear. Emma avoided John as much as possible. She kept her interactions with him brief and focused on the children. When he tried to talk to her, she would make excuses and walk away. She knew he was trying to apologize, trying to make things right, but she wasn't ready to hear it. Not yet. The wound was too fresh, too raw. But in the back of her mind, a plan was slowly taking shape. She needed to do something to make John understand the depth of his betrayal. She needed to make him feel the pain he had caused her, and she knew just the person who could help her. Emma reached out to an old college friend, Mark. They had met during their freshman year and had quickly become close. Mark had always had feelings for her, but Emma had never reciprocated. They had remained friends over the years, keeping in touch through occasional phone calls and messages. She knew she could count on him now. With a trembling hand, Emma dialed Mark's number. The phone rang twice before he answered. "Hey Emma, it's been a while. How are you?" Mark's voice was warm and friendly, instantly putting her at ease. "Hi Mark," Emma said, her voice shaking. I need your help." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Mark's voice grew serious. "Anything, Emma? What's wrong?" Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "John's been having an affair. I found out a few days ago." "Oh, Emma, I'm so sorry," Mark said softly, his concern evident. "What can I do?" "I need you to help me make him understand the pain he's caused," Emma said, her voice filled with determination. "I need to take revenge." Mark hesitated, his voice cautious. "Are you sure that's the best way to handle this?" "I don't know," Emma admitted, her voice breaking. "But I need to do something. I need to make him feel what I'm feeling." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Mark sighed. "Okay, Emma, I'll help you. What do you need me to do?" Emma felt a mixture of relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Mark. I knew I could count on you." Emma and Mark met at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, a place where they wouldn't be recognized. It was a quiet, cozy spot, with dim lighting and soft music playing in the background. Emma chose a table in the corner, away from the other patrons. Mark arrived a few minutes later, his face etched with concern. He hugged Emma tightly, and she felt a surge of emotion. It had been so long since someone had held her like that, offering comfort without expecting anything in return. They sat down, and Mark looked at her with a mixture of sympathy and determination. "Tell me everything," he said, his voice gentle. Emma took a deep breath and recounted the events of the past few days. She told him about Lisa's visit, John's confession, and the pain that had consumed her since. As she spoke, Mark listened intently, his expression growing darker with each passing minute. "I can't believe he would do this to you," Mark said, his voice filled with anger. "You don't deserve this, Emma." "I know," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's why I need your help. I need to make him understand what he's done." Mark nodded, his jaw set. "What do you have in mind?" Emma glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned in closer. "I want to make him jealous," she said quietly. "I want him to think that I'm moving on, that I don't need him anymore." Mark raised an eyebrow. "And you think that will work?" "I don't know," Emma admitted. "But I have to try. I need to see him suffer, even if it's just a little." Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Okay, Emma, I'll do it. But promise me one thing." "What's that?" Emma asked, looking at him intently. Promise me that if this doesn't work, you'll talk to a therapist. You need to find a way to heal, whether this plan works or not. Emma nodded, her eyes filling with tears. I promise. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Emma and Mark met several times to discuss their plan and iron out the details. They decided to stage a series of coincidental encounters where John would see them together, laughing and enjoying each other's company. The goal was to make John believe that Emma was moving on and that she was happy without him. The first encounter was at a local park. Emma and Mark sat on a bench, talking and laughing, as if they didn't have a care in the world. They knew John often took the kids to that park, and sure enough, he showed up with Olivia and Ben in tow. Emma saw him before he saw her and braced herself for what was to come. When John finally noticed them, his face went pale. He watched them for a few moments, his expression a mix of shock and hurt. Emma pretended not to see him, but she could feel his eyes on her, and it gave her a twisted sense of satisfaction. The second encounter was at a popular cafe near John's office. Emma and Mark sat at a table by the window, sipping coffee and sharing a piece of cake. They laughed and talked, and Emma even reached out to touch Mark's hand a few times, making sure John could see. As expected, John walked by on his way to work, and when he saw them, his face contorted with jealousy and anger. Each encounter chipped away at John's composure. Emma could see the pain in his eyes, and while it didn't erase her own hurt, it gave her a sense of control over the situation. She was making him feel a fraction of what she had felt, and that was enough for now. One evening, after a particularly intense encounter at the park, John confronted Emma. She was in the kitchen, washing dishes, when he stormed in, his face flushed with anger. Emma, we need to talk, he said, his voice barely controlled. Emma turned to face him, her expression calm. About what? About you and Mark, John said, his voice rising. What the hell is going on? Emma met his gaze, her eyes cold. What do you care, John? You lost the right to question me when you decided to have an affair. John flinched at her words, but he pressed on. Emma, please, I know I messed up, but this, whatever this is, needs to stop. Why? Emma asked, crossing her arms. Does it hurt you to see me with someone else? Does it make you feel betrayed? John stared at her, his eyes filled with anguish. Yes, it does. But this isn't the way to fix things. Emma took a step closer, her voice low and fierce. I'm not trying to fix things, John. I'm trying to make you understand what you've done to me, the pain you've caused. John's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. Emma, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to make it right. Maybe you can't, Emma said, her voice softening. Maybe we're too broken to fix, but you need to know what it feels like to be betrayed. John looked at her, tears in his eyes. I do know, Emma. I feel it every day, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right, if you'll let me. Emma stared at him, her heart torn. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the regret and the pain. Part of her wanted to believe him, to give him a chance to make amends. But the hurt was still too fresh, too raw. Prove it, she said finally. Show me that you're willing to change, and maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to move forward. John nodded, hope flickering in his eyes. I will, Emma. I promise. As John left the kitchen, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. It was a small step, but it was a start. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in days, she felt a sense of possibility. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to heal. Chapter 4. The Emotional Affair. The days following Emma and John's confrontation were marked by a tense, uneasy truce. Emma continued to avoid John, focusing on her children and her growing relationship with Mark. The guilt and shame John felt were palpable, and he made no effort to hide his remorse. But Emma wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. Emma and Mark began spending more time together, their old friendship rekindling and transforming into something deeper. They met for coffee in the mornings, went for long walks in the park, and had dinners at cozy, out-of-the-way restaurants. To the outside world, it looked like a rekindled friendship, but Emma made sure John noticed the closeness between them. One afternoon, Emma was getting ready to meet Mark when John approached her. His eyes were tired, dark circles under them, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Are you going out again?" he asked, his voice strained. "Yes," Emma replied, not looking at him. "I'm meeting Mark for coffee." John sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Emma, can we talk? Please?" Emma paused, turning to face him. "What is there to talk about, John? You made your choices. Now I'm making mine." John looked defeated, his shoulders slumping. "I know I hurt you, but whatever you're doing with Mark, it's not going to fix things." Emma's eyes flashed with anger. "You don't get to tell me how to fix things. You don't get to tell me anything. You lost that right." John opened his mouth to say something, then closed it again, shaking his head. He watched as Emma grabbed her coat and walked out the door, feeling more helpless than ever. That evening, Emma and Mark sat in a cozy cafe, a small, dimly lit place that had become their favorite spot. The atmosphere was warm and intimate, the air filled with the rich aroma of coffee and freshly baked pastries. They sat at a corner table, away from the other patrons, their conversation flowing easily. Mark reached across the table and took Emma's hand, his eyes filled with concern. "Are you sure about this, Emma? Are you sure this is what you want?" Emma looked into his eyes, seeing the genuine concern and affection there. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his question. "Yes, Mark, I need this. I need to take control of my life again. For so long, I've been living for John, for the kids. I need to do something for myself." Mark squeezed her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "Okay, I'm here for you, whatever you need." They continued their conversation, their hands still entwined. Emma felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that John was likely at home, stewing in his own jealousy and regret. It wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about reclaiming her own sense of self, her own happiness. As the weeks went by, Emma and Mark's relationship deepened. They shared their hopes and fears, their dreams and regrets. They laughed together, confided in each other, and found comfort in their growing connection. For the first time in months, Emma felt a sense of peace, a sense of being understood and valued. One evening, as Emma and Mark were walking through the park, they found a secluded bench and sat down. The evening air was cool and crisp, the stars twinkling above them. Mark turned to Emma, his expression serious. "Emma, I need to ask you something," he said, his voice quiet. "What is it?" Emma asked, her heart beating faster. "Where do we go from here?" Mark asked, his eyes searching hers. "I mean, what do you want from us?" Emma looked down, her mind racing. She hadn't allowed herself to think too far ahead, too caught up in the present moment. But Mark's question forced her to confront the reality of their situation. She took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "I don't know," she admitted. "I honestly don't know. This started as a way to make John feel the pain he caused me, but it's become more than that. You've become important to me, Mark, but I'm still married and I have my kids to think about. Mark nodded, his expression understanding. I know, Emma, and I don't want to pressure you. I just needed to know where you stand. Emma felt a surge of gratitude for his patience and understanding. I care about you, Mark. I really do. But I need time to figure things out. Mark smiled, squeezing her hand. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, no matter what. The emotional affair between Emma and Mark continued, each day bringing them closer together. They found solace in each other, a respite from the pain and betrayal that had marked Emma's life since John's affair came to light. Meanwhile, John watched from the sidelines, his heart breaking a little more each day. He saw the way Emma smiled at Mark, the way her eyes lit up when she was with him. It tore at him, knowing he was the cause of her seeking comfort elsewhere. He tried to talk to Emma, tried to apologize again and again, but she remained distant, her walls firmly in place. One night, after another failed attempt to reach out to Emma, John sat alone in the living room, his head in his hands. He knew he had messed up, knew he had driven her away with his actions. But seeing her with Mark, seeing the happiness he could no longer provide, was almost too much to bear. He realized that he had to change, not just for Emma, but for himself and their children. As Emma and Mark's relationship grew stronger, John made a decision. He would fight for his marriage, fight to be the husband and father he should have been all along. He would do whatever it took to win back Emma's trust and love, even if it meant facing the consequences of his actions head-on. Emma's journey was far from over, and the path ahead was uncertain. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of hope. With Mark by her side, she felt strong enough to face whatever the future held. Whether she chose to rebuild her marriage with John or move on with Mark, she knew she had the strength to reclaim her life and find her happiness again. Chapter 5. The Climax. John couldn't take it anymore. The jealousy, the guilt, and the fear of losing Emma were tearing him apart. Every time he saw her with Mark, it was like a knife twisting in his heart. He had tried to be patient, to give her space, but the uncertainty was unbearable. He had to confront her, had to know where they stood. One evening, as Emma was getting ready to go out, John took a deep breath and approached her. His hands were shaking, and his heart was pounding in his chest. He couldn't let this go on any longer. "Emma, please," John pleaded, standing in the doorway of their bedroom. "We need to talk." Emma looked up from her vanity, her expression unreadable. She had been putting on her makeup, but now she set down her brush and turned to face him. "What is there to talk about, John?" "Us," John said desperately. He took a step closer, his voice cracking with emotion. "I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry, but please, let's try to work this out." Emma's eyes softened slightly as she studied his face. She saw the anguish there, the sincerity in his eyes. For a moment, her resolve wavered. "Do you understand now, John? Do you understand the pain you caused me?" John nodded, tears streaming down his face. He had never felt so vulnerable, so exposed. "Yes, Emma. I understand. Please forgive me." Emma took a deep breath, her own eyes filling with tears. She looked away, struggling with her emotions. The memory of his betrayal was still fresh, the wound still raw. But she also saw the man she had fallen in love with, the father of her children, standing before her, begging for a second chance. "I don't know if I can, John," Emma said softly, her voice trembling. "But I'm willing to try, for the sake of our family." John's heart soared with relief. He stepped forward and hugged her tightly, his arms wrapped around her, as if he were afraid to let go. "Thank you, Emma. I promise I'll do everything I can to make things right." Emma held him for a moment, feeling the familiar warmth of his embrace. It was a small step, but it was a start. She pulled back slightly, looking up at him. "You need to understand, John. This won't be easy. It will take time, and we both have a lot of work to do." John nodded, his eyes still glistening with tears. "I know, Emma. I'll do whatever it takes. I just want us to be a family again." The days that followed were difficult. Emma and John took small steps towards rebuilding their relationship, but the road was fraught with challenges. Emma still spent time with Mark, but their relationship shifted as she focused on repairing her marriage. Mark understood and supported her decision, though it was hard for him to let go of the closeness they had shared. Emma and John began attending couples therapy, facing their issues head-on. The sessions were intense, filled with painful truths and raw emotions. Emma confronted John about his betrayal, expressing the depth of her hurt and anger. John listened, his heart breaking all over again as he realized the full extent of the pain he had caused. Through therapy, they learned to communicate better, to understand each other's needs and fears. John made a conscious effort to regain Emma's trust, showing her through his actions that he was committed to their relationship. He spent more time with the children, taking on more responsibilities at home, and making sure Emma knew she was valued and loved. One evening, after a particularly emotional therapy session, John and Emma sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, a serene contrast to the turmoil they had been experiencing. "Do you think we can really do this?" John asked quietly, his hand reaching for Emma's. Emma looked at him, seeing the hope and fear in his eyes. She squeezed his hand, feeling a spark of warmth. "I think we can try. It won't be easy, but I believe we can heal." John nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Thank you, Emma, for giving us another chance." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "We're doing this for our family, John, and maybe in time we can find our way back to each other." As they sat there, hand in hand, they knew the journey ahead would be long and challenging. But for the sake of their family and the love they once shared, they were willing to face it together. The path to healing had begun, and with it, the hope that one day they could rebuild the trust that had been broken. Chapter 6. The Aftermath. Emma and John began the slow and painful process of rebuilding their marriage. The days following their decision to try again were filled with a mix of hope and apprehension. Both knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but they were committed to seeing it through. They started attending counseling sessions twice a week, a neutral ground where they could openly discuss their feelings and work through their issues. The first few sessions were the hardest. Emma found herself reliving the pain and betrayal, her emotions raw and overwhelming. She voiced her anger and disappointment, her words sharp and unforgiving. John listened, his heart breaking anew with every tear Emma shed, every accusation she hurled. The therapist guided them, helping Emma articulate her pain and John understand the depth of his betrayal. "Why, John?" Emma asked during one session, her voice trembling. "Why did you do it?" John took a deep breath, his eyes filled with remorse. "I don't have a good answer, Emma. I was selfish, and I let my ego and desires cloud my judgment. I never stopped loving you, but I lost sight of what truly mattered." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Do you have any idea how much you've hurt me? How much you've hurt our family?" John nodded, his voice choked with emotion. "I do now, Emma, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me." The sessions gradually became less confrontational and more constructive. They learned techniques to improve their communication, to express their needs and feelings without resorting to blame or anger. Emma began to see glimpses of the man she had fallen in love with, the man she had built a life with. John, for his part, showed consistent effort and sincerity in his actions. He spent more time at home, took on more responsibilities with the children, and made sure to include Emma in every decision. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Emma found John in the kitchen, cooking dinner. The smell of roasted chicken and herbs filled the air, a comforting reminder of simpler times. John looked up as she entered, a tentative smile on his face. "Hey," he said softly. "I thought I'd make dinner tonight. Give you a break." Emma felt a lump in her throat. It was a small gesture, but it meant so much. "Thank you, John. That's really sweet." They ate together as a family that night, a rare moment of normalcy amidst the chaos. Olivia and Ben, oblivious to the struggles their parents were facing, chatted excitedly about their day. Emma watched them, her heart swelling with love and a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that, despite everything, she wanted to fight for her family, to give her children the stable, loving home they deserved. Lisa, feeling guilty for her role in the affair, made the difficult decision to transfer to another city and start anew. She sent Emma a heartfelt letter, apologizing for the pain she had caused and wishing her well. "Dear Emma, I know my words can never undo the hurt I've caused, but I want to offer my deepest apologies. I'm truly sorry for my part in what happened. I've decided to transfer to another city and start fresh. I hope you and John can find a way to heal." Sincerely, Lisa. Emma read the letter, her emotions a complex mix of anger, sadness, and a small measure of forgiveness. She appreciated Lisa's acknowledgement and the fact that she was taking responsibility for her actions. Mark, understanding that Emma needed to focus on her marriage, respectfully stepped back, but remained a supportive friend. He checked in occasionally, offering words of encouragement and understanding. Emma was grateful for his friendship, knowing he had been a crucial part of her journey towards healing. As the months passed, Emma and John continued to work on their relationship. They celebrated small victories, like a day without arguments or a moment of genuine laughter. They went on dates, rediscovering the things that had brought them together in the first place. They also faced setbacks, moments when the old wounds felt too fresh and the doubts crept back in. One night, as they lay in bed, John reached for Emma's hand. "Thank you for giving us another chance," he whispered. "I know it's not easy." Emma squeezed his hand, feeling a spark of the connection they once had. "I'm doing this for our family, John, but also for myself. I want to believe that we can come out stronger on the other side." John nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "We will, Emma. I promise we will." The road to healing was long and winding, filled with both pain and hope. But with each step they took, Emma and John began to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. They learned to forgive, to let go of the past, and to embrace the future with a renewed sense of commitment. Emma knew that their journey was far from over, but she felt a sense of peace, knowing they were facing it together. They had been through the storm, and now, as they stood on the precipice of a new beginning, they were ready to face whatever came next, hand in hand. Chapter 7. Moving Forward. Months turned into years, and slowly the wounds began to heal. Emma and John's journey through the aftermath of the affair was long and challenging, but it had forged a new path for them. Their relationship, once shattered, had been rebuilt through consistent effort, open communication, and a shared commitment to each other and their family. Emma and John had learned to forgive each other and themselves. The process was gradual and required patience, but they discovered that forgiveness was not just a single act, but a continuous practice. They focused on their children, their careers, and most importantly, their love for each other. Family life had settled into a new rhythm. Emma and John found joy in their daily routines, from school drop-offs and pickups to family dinners and weekend outings. They made a concerted effort to be present and engaged with Olivia and Ben, providing them with a stable and loving environment. Their careers flourished as well. John had made significant strides at work, having channeled his energy into his job with renewed focus and dedication. Emma had taken on new challenges in her career, pursuing projects that fulfilled her and allowed her to grow professionally. Despite the progress they had made, Emma knew that trust was fragile and had to be earned every day. She understood that the scars from the affair would always be a part of their story, but they no longer defined their relationship. Instead, they served as a reminder of their resilience and the strength they had found in each other. One evening, Emma stood in the kitchen, preparing dinner once again. The aroma of lasagna filled the air, mingling with the comforting scents of garlic and herbs. Emma moved around the kitchen with ease, her movements fluid and confident. The kitchen, once a place of tension and conflict, had become a space of warmth and connection. As she stirred the sauce, she felt a wave of contentment. The past was a painful memory, but it was also a testament to their resilience and commitment to each other. The challenges they had faced had ultimately brought them closer together, teaching them the value of love, forgiveness, and perseverance. John walked in, his presence a familiar and comforting part of her daily life. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his touch warm and reassuring. "What's for dinner?" he asked, his voice soft and affectionate. He kissed her cheek, the gesture a simple but cherished expression of their renewed connection. "Your favorite," Emma replied, leaning into his embrace. "Lasagna." John smiled, holding her close. His love for Emma was evident in his every action, in the way he supported her, and in the little things he did to show his appreciation. "I love you, Emma," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. Emma turned in his arms, looking up at him with a smile. "I love you too, John," she said softly. "Always." They shared a moment of quiet intimacy, the kind that had become a hallmark of their relationship. Emma knew that while their journey had been fraught with difficulty, they had emerged stronger and more united. Their love, once tested by the storm, had proven to be resilient, capable of withstanding even the most devastating trials. As they stood together in the kitchen, their love and commitment were palpable. They had come through the darkest moment of their marriage and emerged on the other side, ready to face whatever the future held. With their hearts intertwined and their spirits renewed, Emma and John were prepared to continue building their life together, one day at a time. Epilogue. Emma and John's journey had been filled with pain, betrayal, and ultimately, forgiveness. The road they had traveled was neither smooth nor predictable. It was marked by difficult conversations, emotional upheavals, and countless moments of introspection. They had faced the harsh reality of infidelity and navigated the treacherous waters of hurt and mistrust. Yet, through it all, they discovered that love was not always easy, but it was worth fighting for. Their marriage, though far from perfect, had grown into something deeper and more meaningful than it had been before. It was not the idyllic relationship they might have once imagined, but it was genuine. It was forged in the crucible of adversity and tempered by their shared commitment to each other. Their love was now tempered with a newfound understanding, one that acknowledged the imperfections of life and the strength needed to endure them. Emma and John had learned to appreciate the small victories and the everyday moments that made their life together special. They no longer took each other for granted. Instead, they embraced each day with gratitude and a renewed sense of purpose. Their home, once a battleground of emotions, had become a sanctuary of warmth and affection. They filled their lives with shared experiences, family outings, quiet evenings, and simple joys that reinforced their bond. They had worked hard to rebuild their trust, brick by brick, and while the foundation was still delicate, it was strong enough to support their love. Their commitment to each other was evident in their actions, their conversations, and the way they navigated their lives together. They had learned to communicate more openly, to listen with empathy, and to support each other through both the challenges and triumphs of their daily lives. Their marriage was a testament to their strength, their perseverance, and their enduring love for each other. It was a living, breathing example of what it meant to confront and overcome adversity. They had weathered the storm and emerged with a clearer understanding of what they meant to each other and what they wanted from their future. As they faced the future together, hand in hand, Emma and John knew that they could overcome anything, as long as they had each other. Their shared experiences had forged an unbreakable bond, one that had been tested and proven resilient. They understood that life would continue to present its challenges, but they were confident in their ability to face them together. In the quiet moments, when the world outside seemed distant and the only sounds were the gentle hum of everyday life, Emma and John would look at each other with a profound sense of gratitude. They knew that their love, while not perfect, was real and worth every ounce of effort they had put into it. Their journey had taught them that the strength of their relationship was not defined by its absence of flaws, but by their unwavering commitment to nurturing and protecting it. With each passing day, they continued to build on the foundation they had worked so hard to establish. They celebrated their victories, learned from their setbacks, and cherished the moments of connection that defined their lives. As they walked forward together, their hands intertwined, they were filled with a quiet confidence and a deep, abiding love that would carry them through whatever the future held.